Can I actually win this LA mayoral race? The race to become the next mayor of Los Angeles has quickly become one of the most closely watched political contests in the country, with major issues such as homelessness, housing affordability, public safety, transportation, and economic inequality dominating public debate. Voters are paying close attention to the candidates seeking to lead the city through its next chapter. Among the contenders, one candidate has emerged as a surprising force in the campaign: Nitya Raman. Once viewed by many political observers as a longshot challenger, Raman has steadily built momentum and transformed herself into one of the most talked-about figures in the race. Her rise has captured the attention of voters, political analysts, and community leaders, who are eager to see whether a progressive outsider can truly compete against a well-established political figure like Karen Bass. When Nitya Raman first announced her candidacy, expectations were relatively modest. Many analysts believed she would struggle to gain traction against candidates with greater name recognition, larger fundraising networks, and stronger institutional support. Los Angeles is one of the largest and most politically complex cities in America, making citywide campaigns incredibly difficult for newcomers. At first glance, the odds appeared stacked against her. Political insiders questioned whether her progressive platform would appeal to enough voters across the city's diverse neighborhoods. Others wondered if she could build the fundraising infrastructure necessary to compete in such an expensive media market. Despite those concerns, Raman entered the race with confidence and determination. She argued that Los Angeles needed bold leadership capable of addressing the city's most urgent challenges. Rather than focusing on traditional political calculations, she centered her campaign around issues she believed directly affected everyday residents. Her message emphasized affordable housing, expanded public transportation, government accountability, environmental sustainability, and policies designed to reduce economic inequality. While some voters embraced these ideas immediately, others remained skeptical about whether such proposals could realistically be implemented. As the campaign progressed, Raman worked tirelessly to introduce herself to voters across the city. She attended community meetings, participated in public forums, visited local neighborhoods, and engaged directly with residents about their concerns. Unlike many campaigns that rely heavily on television advertising and political endorsements, Raman focused on grassroots organizing. Volunteers played a central role in spreading her message, knocking on doors, making phone calls, and connecting with voters on a personal level. This approach helped her establish a reputation as a candidate willing to listen rather than simply deliver prepared talking points. Residents frequently described her as accessible, thoughtful, and deeply engaged with community issues. One of the biggest challenges Raman faced was overcoming perceptions surrounding progressive politics. Critics argued that some of her proposals were too ambitious or unrealistic. Others suggested her policies did not go far enough to address systemic problems facing the city. Balancing these competing expectations required careful navigation. Raman attempted to build bridges between different communities and political perspectives, while remaining true to her core principles. This strategy allowed her to attract support from a broad coalition of voters, including young professionals, longtime community activists, renters, environmental advocates, and residents frustrated with the status quo. As months passed, signs of growing momentum became increasingly difficult to ignore. Attendance at campaign events increased. Volunteer networks expanded. Social media engagement surged. More importantly, voters who previously knew little about Raman began paying attention to her campaign. Meanwhile, Karen Bass remained one of the race's most formidable candidates. With years of political experience and widespread recognition, Bass entered the contest as a leading contender. Her supporters pointed to her leadership background and established relationships as evidence that she possessed the experience necessary to govern a city as large and complex as Los Angeles. The contrast between the two candidates became one of the defining storylines of the election. On one side stood a veteran political leader with deep institutional support. On the other stood a progressive challenger seeking to convince voters that fresh ideas and new approaches were needed. As debates unfolded and campaign events multiplied, voters were presented with competing visions for the future of Los Angeles. Questions about homelessness, public safety, housing development, transportation infrastructure, and economic opportunity dominated public discussion. Raman consistently emphasized the need for systemic solutions rather than temporary fixes. She argued that many of the city's most persistent problems required long-term investments and structural reforms. Her campaign focused heavily on creating policies that would address root causes rather than simply managing symptoms. This message began resonating with voters, who felt frustrated by years of limited progress on major issues. For many residents, housing costs continued to rise, while homelessness remained highly visible throughout the city. Traffic congestion, infrastructure concerns, and affordability challenges added to growing dissatisfaction. As election season intensified, polling data began revealing an unexpected shift. Surveys showed that Rahman was gaining support at a remarkable pace. What once seemed like an unlikely campaign was becoming increasingly competitive. Political observers who had initially dismissed her candidacy were forced to reconsider their assumptions. The biggest surprise came when polling results indicated that Rahman had climbed into second place. The numbers suggested she had significantly narrowed the gap separating her from Karen Bass and established herself as a legitimate contender. For supporters, the polling results represented validation of months of hard work and grassroots organizing. Volunteers who had spent countless hours engaging with voters saw evidence that their efforts were making a difference. Political analysts pointed to several factors behind Rahman's rise. First, her consistent focus on key local issues helped distinguish her from other candidates. Second, her ability to connect directly with voters created a sense of authenticity that many found appealing. Third, growing frustration with traditional political approaches created opportunities for candidates offering alternative solutions. Momentum can be one of the most powerful forces in politics. Once voters begin viewing a candidate as a serious contender, support often accelerates. Media coverage increases, fundraising improves, and undecided voters become more willing to consider the campaign. Rahman appeared to benefit from exactly this dynamic. As her profile rose, more residents became familiar with her policy proposals and leadership style. Conversations that once centered on whether she could compete shifted toward whether she could actually win. The implications of her rise extended beyond the mayoral race itself. For many progressives, Rahman's success represented evidence that voters were increasingly open to new ideas and alternative approaches to governance. Her campaign became a case study in how grassroots organizing and community engagement could challenge traditional political advantages. At the same time, supporters of Karen Bass emphasized that strong polling numbers do not automatically translate into electoral victory. Campaigns are often unpredictable, and voter turnout can dramatically influence final outcomes. As election day approached, both candidates intensified their efforts. Campaign events became more frequent. Advertising increased. Endorsements received greater attention. Every appearance, debate, and interview carried heightened significance. The final stretch of any campaign is often where elections are decided. Candidates must maintain momentum, avoid major mistakes, and persuade undecided voters that they offer the strongest vision for the future. For Rahman, the challenge was clear. She needed to continue expanding her coalition, while demonstrating that her policy agenda could attract support across a broad spectrum of Los Angeles residents. For Bass, the goal was equally straightforward: leverage her experience, name recognition, and established support base to maintain her position at the top of the field. The result was a highly competitive race that captured the attention of voters throughout the city. Regardless of the eventual outcome, Nitya Rahman's campaign had already accomplished something significant. She transformed herself from an underdog candidate into one of the central figures in the election. Her rise challenged conventional wisdom and demonstrated the potential power of grassroots political movements. The campaign also highlighted broader questions about the future direction of Los Angeles. What kind of leadership do residents want? How should the city address its most pressing challenges? And what role should progressive ideas play in shaping public policy? These questions continue to define the conversation surrounding the race. As voters prepare to make their decision, all eyes remain on the contest between Nitya Rahman and Karen Bass. With momentum shifting and public interest growing, the outcome remains one of the most closely watched political stories in Los Angeles. Can Nitya Rahman continue her surge and complete one of the most surprising political comebacks in recent city history? Or will Karen Bass's experience and established support prove too strong to overcome? Only the voters can decide. What do you think about Nitya Rahman's rise in the Los Angeles mayoral race? Does she have what it takes to win, or do you believe Karen Bass remains the favorite? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on the biggest political races and breaking election news. Thanks for the watching and subscribe.